So we are here tonight to discuss Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, which we both read recently. Before we go into this, I just want to say what an astonishing book that I felt this was. I think I speak for you, Hire, as well.
Oh my God.
It
So
really
yeah, I've not
was.
stopped thinking about it.
There is so much we would like to say, but we are restricted time-wise. But I would urge anybody to get themselves a copy. Don't be put off by its size. Don't think it's too academic. This is a brilliant, accessible book that is so important and pertinent right now.
It will change the world. This book is it sometimes reads like a sociology thesis, but really it's so accessible and readable. The author is comparing and contrasting slavery in America, the caste system in America, in India, and the horrors of Nazi Germany, and talks us through the dehumanization process that's necessary to justify the levels of crimes against humanity and violence that is inflicted upon all of these victims, as I see them, and also how caste is the backbone of race and how that is, the system holding everything together. And it's absolutely mind-blowing.
It's a very different way of looking at American society.
I agree.
And I think she puts it so brilliantly by explaining that, racism is the mistreatment, the abuse of people based on the social construct of race. But what casteism is, it's the investment in a system that ultimately retains your privilege. You have an interest in keeping things as they are because they work for you, which essentially means that you can be a good, kind person who is not a racist, who is not a hater, but you are somebody who could still be casteist because you are invested and interested in maintaining this system that suits you. And it's this exploration of that. And Haya's already mentioned the three different parts of this trio that Isabel Wilkerson brings together to draw these comparisons, these similarities, and the fact that these are systems that have occurred in different parts of the world over different times. To me, this shows that whilst this is a book about America centrally, in fact, it's a book about humanity and about our responsibility ultimately as humans to do something about it.
It's transient because actually three groups, massive groups of people across the world have been persuaded that other people are lower than them and that you are able to inflict untold violence and horrors on them and it's okay. I think the social construct that you mentioned hit me as well, because there was an excerpt about The Matrix, which is a film about people being programmed by a computer and not appreciating that it's a program and it's not real, and how race and caste is an arbitrary system that we have created. And the Nigerian professor approached the author and said, there are no black people in Africa. But the concept of black people is a social construct. They see themselves as all beautiful colors of brown and beige, and the whitest Chinese person is still not white, and it's just a futile, arbitrary system. I didn't fully appreciate the horrors, and she goes into a lot of detail about what was inflicted upon the slaves and the banality of what was inflicted, down to the fabrics that they could wear and the emotions that they weren't allowed to express because they weren't human and you weren't allowed to empathize with them. But what she does brilliantly is she brings it into our lives, and slavery and those issues have trickled down and bled into the 60s and 70s and now, and the effects are still felt. I think she calls it the intrusion of caste in everyday life, and challenging the unconscious bias and stereotypes.
there are so many things that she does that cleverly convey that. She talks about using height rather than skin color as a way of identifying people and separating them and structuring them, essentially. I would say one thing that she did many things brilliantly, but one thing that struck me as I read this was the metaphor that she uses throughout, that America is a house. It's a house that, you know, its people have inherited, and houses have so many problems. They can have damp, they can have cracked walls, and those problems were there. They've been inherited. We didn't put them there. But once you know that they're there, once you discover that there's a massive crack in the ceiling, it's incumbent on you to do something about it. And having listened to an interview that Isabel Wilkerson gave, she likened herself to a building inspector who is now presenting these problems to her audience. Now, she's not saying X, Y, or Z is the solution, although she does talk about radical empathy as being crucial to that. But what she's doing is really, I mean, it sounds huge, but it is huge. She's awakening humanity to the way the world is. And I just think that we all need to understand that. And it's written in such a way that I think really anybody can, if they just want to make the time to read this.
It will change your life. I agree with you. As a barrister, there was another part about the flagrant double standards historically in America, obviously, and how slaves were not, they were under the control of the law, but they weren't protected by the law. The law was the enemy. And how that has also kind of influenced what's going on today with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and those, you know, unbelievable things that have happened and the challenges that are faced at the moment actually all links back. There was so much I didn't appreciate. I mean, Sophie, I didn't appreciate that Nazi Germany was based on the American slave system and American laws. I have
to say, though, with reference to that, I think there was a really key message she got across because, you know, with regards to Nazi Germany and so many figures in history, there is always that, well, if we just get rid of the dictator, it's going to be fine. If you just get rid of the despot and we intercept them before they come into power, it's going to be okay. But she makes a brilliant point that it's not actually about that. It's called the euphoria. I think it's the chapter called the euphoria of hate. And it's actually about everybody. And that idea that, in fact, the hatred lies sort of within people. We've all got our own interests. And there's a brilliant quote, and I don't know if there is a minute left, but she makes this wonderful point. Rather than focusing on the despot, it's harder to focus on the danger of common will, the weaknesses of the human immune system, and the ease with which the toxins can infect succeeding generations, because it means the enemy, the threat, is not one man, it's us, all of us, lurking in humanity itself.
Hitler was only one man. And that's the point. There's no one person that you can point to with this, you know, with slaves. I mean, but there were thousands and thousands of slave owners that inflicted heinous violence and abuse, and they thought it was okay and justified, and how she brings that into everyday life, and it makes it so relevant. I mean, she faced such incredible racism at times, you know, this beautiful educated black woman who's, you know, told to like go to economy because she can't possibly be in first class. And I think she exposes the vulnerability in humanity, but also gives us the way forward. And it's such a hopeful book as well. And it's such an uplifting book at times, but also hard and difficult read. And I think everyone should read it.
I agree.
Mandatory reading.
Indeed.